I've, I thought I'd ask us a few questions, maybe to start with. Um, in our lives, just say to yourself, are you sometimes overwhelmed? What are you overwhelmed by? Things like work and money and demands on your time, looking after your car, praying that it'll get it through its MOT, maybe family, friends, maybe traveling, um, taking holidays, worried about the news and overwhelmed by that, your health. Maybe you've got like some of our friends have injuries, and the list goes on, doesn't it? All sorts of things can cause us stress, and in different ways too. These things affect different people because there are things that may be stresses that are involved because they're not under our control. Maybe we feel like we can't control things, we don't know about things, so we worry. And the more we worry, the more that turns into stress. We often try with these things, don't we, to theorize reasons and solutions for it. And it's not a new feeling. You see, mankind has always struggled with this problem. Feeling overwhelmed is perhaps a natural part of life, but dwelling on that feeling is dangerous, and we must believe that we can overcome it. We have the power, don't we, to control our own thoughts and as a result, control the sort of person we are. When you're feeling overwhelmed, your life isn't falling apart. Often it's your thoughts that are. And maybe it's time to just sometimes take a minute, um, maybe have a clean out of these self-deprecating negative thoughts. And sometimes people find that useful. And if you do this, you find you feel a little refreshed and invigorated. Maybe you have a renewed energy to take on the world. And sometimes we may need help to do this. And just to show that this is not new and this is not innovative with today's, well-being and mental health and mindfulness is big business. I looked back at one of Israel's greatest leaders, Moses, and remember, Moses was stressed and worried. He wasn't confident. In Exodus 3, didn't he say to God, I am nobody. How can I go to the king, that is Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, and bring the Israelites out of Egypt? Well, God comes back at him, doesn't he, in the next chapter? But Moses said, no, Lord, don't send me. I've never been a good speaker. I haven't become one since you began to speak to me. I'm a poor speaker, slow and hesitant. And the Lord became angry with Moses and said, what about your brother Aaron, the Levite? I know he can speak well. In fact, he's coming to you now to meet you and will be glad to see you. You can speak to him and tell him what to say. I will help both of you speak, and I will tell you both what to do. Maybe that was it for Moses. You think that might be the only time. But then we look at Moses on the mountain, and he has a lack of confidence, and he's worried and stressed again. He's overwhelmed. In Exodus 33, then Moses said to the Lord, see, you say to me, bring up this people, but you have not let me know whom you will send with me. Yet you have said, I know you by name. You have also found grace in my sight. Now therefore I pray, if I have found grace in your sight, show me now your way, that I may know you, and that I may find grace in your sight, and consider that this nation is your people. And he said, my presence will go with you, and I will give you rest. Then he said to him, if your presence does not go with us, do not bring us up from here. For how then will it be known that your people and I have found grace in your sight, except you go with us? So we shall be separate, your people and I, from all the people who are on the face of the earth. So the Lord said to Moses, I will do this thing that you have spoken, for you have found grace in my sight, and I know you by name. And he said, that's Moses, please show me your glory. Then he said, I will make all my goodness pass before you. I will proclaim the name of the Lord before you. I will be gracious to whom I will be gracious, and I will have compassion to whom I will have compassion. But he said, you cannot see my face, for no man shall see me and live. And, and the Lord said, here is a place by me, and you shall stand on the rock. So it shall be, while my glory passes by, that I will put you in the cleft of the rock. I will cover you with my hand while I pass by. Then I will take away my hand, and you will see my back, but my face shall not be seen. There's little doubt, isn't it, that Moses was perhaps one of the greatest leaders in Jewish history, but he got so stressed out with his responsibilities. He was carrying all that he was he was carrying a lot of work and a lot of responsibility, and so much so that at times he wanted to die. And God had Moses to lead the people out of Egypt and into the promised land. But we can see from our readings, Moses didn't want to do it initially, refusing to even speak to Pharaoh. And his excuse? His inability to speak. God eventually provided him with a simple solution. God didn't give him the excuse. He sent his brother Aaron to speak for him. And it wasn't that Aaron would take control. God said, I will tell you both what to say. And it's perhaps fair to say that as Moses led Israel, they weren't the easiest people to deal with, were they? They repeatedly complained and grumbled about things. They, very soon after they'd gone out of Egypt, disobeyed God, and they kept on disobeying God. Even Moses' father-in-law, Jethro, noticed the stress Moses was under, and he said to him, what you are doing is not good. You and these people who come to you will only wear yourselves out. The work is too heavy for you. You cannot handle it alone. So it seems in Moses' case, the answer was quite simple, to delegate the work, and that's what he did, to qualify people and trust them to do it. Moses learned that being a good leader isn't just about doing everything yourself, but letting others help out. Different people have different skills. Other people are better at doing certain tasks than we are. And we should recognize that and allow people to get involved rather than trying to be the hero who does everything alone. Also, Moses learned to draw on God's strength rather than his own. God told Moses, my presence will go with you and I will give you rest. The word rest here means an inner peace or a well-being, a security and a confidence. God doesn't want us to be living with this stress, constantly on the edge of burnout. He wants us to find rest in him. The answers to Moses' stress perhaps are also part of the answer to ours. He wants us to learn to share out the workload and to turn to him for the rest and peace that we need. But can we do that? Can we lean on God and trust him to help us? Sometimes we just forget that, don't we? That's when life can overtake us. We can lose control. Sometimes our inbuilt defenses, our knowledge that we can do it kicks in and we try to do it on our own. Like Moses, when God was choosing him to lead the people, do we come up with excuses? Like when the people were told to leave the camp at Sinai. What can we learn from Moses here when God steps in to help? He provides a helper and comforts Moses with words of encouragement. Our problems are not usually as bad as we think. Often we're told by experts to break down the feelings into manageable parts, to take a short break, to plan a set of actions to sort out the problem. Certainly they don't recommend sitting on the couch with a duvet and a pillow, dwelling on these thoughts. That's going to make it no better, is it? In fact, it usually makes it worse. Sometimes just doing something helps us take our mind off the big problem so we can start to solve it. Remember, too, when King David was stressed, it must have been extremely stressful to him because Saul wanted to kill him. Saul was a great, mighty warrior. He was the powerful king of Egypt, and at one time God was with him. So no wonder little David, just the small shepherd boy, was scared, and he ran away and hid with his army at one point. Let's see in 1 Samuel 18, where it says, "The next day an evil spirit from God came forcefully on Saul. He was prophesying in his house while David was playing the lyre, as he usually did. Saul had a spear in his hand, and he hurled it, saying to himself, 'I'll pin David to the wall.' But David eluded him twice." And then we go further down where it says, "Now Saul was afraid of David, because the Lord was with David, but had departed from Saul. So he sent David away from him and gave him command over 1,000 men. And David led the troops in their campaigns. In everything he did, he had great success because the Lord was with him. When Saul saw how successful he was afraid of him." But all of Israel and Judah loved David because he led them in the campaigns. David's secret was that God was with him. God protected him and led him to victory. I'm not saying David didn't worry, and Saul tried in vain to deal with David, first of all by physically attacking him, and then sending David into dangerous battles, perhaps under-equipped and undermanned, hoping that the battles would kill David and Saul wouldn't be to blame. But as we can see, God protected David because he had plans for him, and David had that confidence. Saul was relying on himself, and God had left him. And we see how this ended up. So what does this mean to us? In Hebrews 10, we get some measure of assurance, don't we? Hebrews 10 and 19 says, "Therefore, brothers, since we have confidence to enter the holy places by the blood of Jesus, by the new and living way that he opened up for us through the curtain, that is, through his flesh. And since we have a great priest over the house of God, let us draw near with a true heart, in full assurance of faith, with our hearts sprinkled, clean from an evil conscience, and our bodies washed with pure water. Let us hold fast the confession of our hope without wavering, for he who promised is faithful. And let us consider how to stir up one another to love and good works, not neglecting to meet together as the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day drawing near." It's an encouraging passage, isn't it, that we should have confidence, because at times when we could meet together, we entered the holy place to worship through Jesus's blood. And that's not a place that many have. It's not a confidence that many have, that they're entering the holy place, because we've confessed, we've believed, and we've trusted through Jesus's blood. And we're encouraged there to stir up one another because of this confidence that we have, because of this assurance of faith. We're encouraged to stir one another up to love and to do good works. It's a pity we can't meet together yet, but that will follow on. It's not a habit for us at the moment, it's the law of the land. And even though God bids us to get together, the law of the land just stops us from doing that. But we can still meet like this, virtually, on Zoom, or in video conferencing, so we can still fulfill part of that. That passage goes on to say, "But recall the former days when you were enlightened and endured a hard struggle with sufferings, sometimes being publicly exposed to reproach and affliction, and sometimes being partners with those so treated. For you had compassion on those in prison, and you joyfully accepted the plundering of your property, since you knew that you yourselves had a better possession and an abiding one. Therefore do not throw away your confidence, which has a great reward. For you have need of endurance, and that when you have done the will of God, you may receive what is promised. For yet a little while, and the coming one will come, and will not delay. But my righteous one shall live by faith, and if he shrinks back, my soul has no pleasure in him. But we are not those who shrink back and are destroyed, but those who have faith and preserve their souls. Just another couple of verses in Hebrews 11. Now faith is the assurance of things hoped for and the conviction of things not seen. For by it the people of old received their commendation. And Hebrews 12:28. Therefore let us be grateful for receiving a kingdom that cannot be shaken, and thus let us offer to God acceptable worship with reverence and awe, for God is a consuming fire. The great verses, aren't we? An assurance and a confirmation of our faith for things that we've not seen. And that thing that we look forward to, that certainty of the kingdom that we are to receive. And it's not a kingdom like we think of on this earth. It's a kingdom in heaven. And that's the kingdom that cannot be shaken. So we're to worship God with reverence and awe, because God is powerful and a consuming fire. The great verses of encouragement, aren't they? That when we meet together, we're meeting as the people of God. And it's because of our belief and our faith. Our faith in God, therefore, I think, should lead us to a full trust in him. A trust to deliver us in all circumstances. A trust that he will care for us and guide us in life. It's faith that gives us that solid foundation, a comfort and a trust that the people of this world just don't know. Faith gives us confidence as we enter the holy place. How many people can say that they enter into the holy place of God to worship, and they are confident in doing so? So I think what should overwhelm us is God's love and our faith, giving us an assurance that he's going to deliver us from all evil. We sing that hymn, don't we? And that worship song, overwhelmed by love, deeper than oceans, high as the heavens, ever living God, your love has rescued me. And I think that sums it up, doesn't it? How vast and deep and overwhelming God's love should be to us, that we cannot measure it, deeper than oceans and higher than heavens. He's an ever-living God that rescued us from sin and that eternity of death. And we're thankful that God's done this. And hopefully that overwhelming love will follow us in our lives and help us through various circumstances. Perhaps we don't think it at the time, but when we look back on life's events, perhaps that's when we see that God was caring for us and surrounding us with his arms and caring for us in these difficult times. So thank you for listening now. We'll close in prayer.